Hi, everyone. Thanks for the intro. I'm Fabrice from Sainsbury's. I head up a product management team in our digital and technology division. And basically, my product teams work directly with both business and software engineers to deliver customer-facing digital products. So we impact the front end, things like tills, payment technologies, as well as mobile apps, online. A lot of my teams are involved in all of those products. So I'm here to tell you about some of the work that we're doing, probably slightly different to the title on the front there. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about retail transformation at Sainsbury's and how we're starting to use agile methodologies to get there. And to bring some of this to life, I'll talk to you a little bit about Smart Shop, which is one of the projects in my portfolio. It's our scan as you shop proposition, and it's about really how it fits into our omni-channel vision and how we want to kind of drive this aligned vision for our customers. Right, so let's start with a bit of context, and I'm going to go wide and come back to retail. So basically, I think a lot of you may agree that some people say we're on the brink of a technological revolution. And it's fundamentally going to start to change the way that we live, work, and interact with each other. So the first industrial revolution was about steam and creating power to mechanize production. The second used electrical power to mass produce items. The third was really about electronics and using technology to automate production. And really now we could start to think about this as potentially the fourth revolution, because we're building on the third in terms of this digital revolution, and it's characterized by the fusion of these technologies, and it's blurring the lines between the physical, the digital, and the biological spheres. I think ultimately, most of you would agree that artificial intelligence is here. We've got self-driving cars, we've got drones delivering packages, we've got virtual assistants, and software can now translate languages, help you invest your money. The constant thing here is change, and I think this quote by Gary Hamel illustrates that very well. It really is about change, and we're in constant change. All our businesses are impacted by constant change, and really it's about how we adapt and how we get better at dealing with that change. So if I bring it back to retail, again, no surprise to any of you, I'm sure, that the grocery sector remains a tough place. It's highly competitive. That trend of people going to convenience rather than larger superstores, the threat from the discounters for the big four, all of that creates a very challenging environment for us to operate in. I think that quote illustrates that quite well. Importantly as well, I think it's about how consumers are changing their behaviors and how we need to deal with that. So with food retailing, especially, it's still a sensory experience. People like to come into a store to smell the fresh bread, see the fresh produce for themselves. And really, there's that immediacy of fulfilling that consumer need. When you want to buy food, you kind of want to do that right away. Most people do anyway. Therefore, most of our customers continue to visit us in store. And what we've realized is that we don't always give our customers the credit they deserve. Customers will multitask. They will engage with our products across many channels. And really, it's about how we start to link up that digital and physical experience. And that's what we want to focus on. The rest of that quote is really great. And it goes on to say that the most successful retailers of the future will be at that intersection of the physical and the digital worlds, leveraging technology to satisfy shoppers however, whenever, and wherever they choose to engage with us. So this aligns to another important trend that I'm sure you'll hear a lot about today, which is that smartphones continue to blur those lines between the physical world and the online world. So linking it back to Sainsbury's and the omni-channel vision that we work to is exactly that. So it plays into this trend. We want to be there whenever, wherever, and however our customers choose to engage with us. Now, what's interesting about this, as well as it being a nice, pithy statement, is that we've realized that this isn't just a technology problem, and it goes much wider than that. It requires transforming the ways in which we work and we are organized across the business. And so we've started to bring cross-functional teams together across previously created silos to truly provide that unified experience to our customers. Now, it's a journey at Sainsbury's, and we're still at the very beginning of it, but it feels like the right approach. I mean, let's face it. Our customers don't really understand what we're talking about when we say the e-commerce team, the store team, the retail team, they're just engaging with our brand and coming to our stores. We have to keep that in mind. So let me tell you a little bit about Smart Shop, which is our scan as you shop proposition, which is currently available to customers in some of our stores. We're planning a much bigger rollout later this year. And essentially, customers use an application, either on a mobile phone, Android or iOS, or on a handset that we provide in store to build a basket in store, transfer that basket to a checkout using a dedicated lane. So essentially, customers sign up using our loyalty card scheme, and they like the fact that they can shop and get in and out of our stores quickly. Importantly, we built this entire software stack ourselves. So from the front-end applications that are on iOS and Android, to the back-end services and APIs that transfer a customer's basket to our tills, we've built that with our own engineers and our own product teams in-house. So the vision for Smart Shop is pretty simple. Our aim is to provide an in-store solution for customers who want to beat the queues and experience an enhanced checkout option using a dedicated lane. For our organization, there are 4 clear objectives, which have enabled us to keep our teams mobilized around this goal, but also has convinced our operating board to continue to invest in the project. And it's important to keep coming back to the vision and to keep coming back to the goals and the reasons you're building these products in the first place, which is why I bring it up today. So just to give you a quick overview of what those are, we're focused around driving sales and improving loyalty. We know that customers who use our digital propositions tend to visit us more often and are more engaged. We want to leverage and continue to leverage that omni-channel experience, all the great stuff we've been doing online for years. How do we start to join the dots up with what we do in store? We want to realize the potential around analytics and the ability to now measure in-store journeys in a much more profound way than we ever could before. And finally, it's also about reducing costs. We want to encourage customers down self-serve channels. And also, this frees up our colleagues to focus on the stuff they really want to do and they're good at, which is customer service and hosting. So as I've mentioned, it's important to us and to my teams to have these clear KPIs laid out. And again, even all the way down to the software engineers who are writing code, we want to make sure that they understand the why and the what they're building. So Smart Shop is the result of an initiative that started about 18 months ago at Sainsbury's, transforming our IT capabilities, as I've mentioned. And really, we made this conscious choice to bring some of this engineering capability in-house, alongside more iterative, agile delivery methodologies. So this also included the introduction of a product management function, and that's really to bridge the gap between the business and the technology, and to make sure that the customer is represented at all stages of the development process. So being more agile, as the slide implies, is really about being more flexible and being able to change and to pivot when we need to. And also, we're no longer committing ourselves to long lead times and projects that don't end up delivering on their promise. We're able to test things quickly, get things to market in front of customers in a store within a matter of weeks, use the data we collect to then inform what we do next. And again, that's really been key for us. Now, as I've previously mentioned, with change being constant, you start to realize, because like most businesses, we started this transformation within IT, but we soon realized that actually the entire business was impacted by this. And you need to start to think about all the other parts of the organization and how they play together to make this happen. So that concept of agility is certainly wider than just IT itself. And we have started to adapt that iterative and flexible approach outside of the business, which is yielding some interesting results. So in terms of using agile methodologies, there's a growing body of knowledge out there and a lot of evidence around how companies that adopt these practices are more successful in certain areas. So certainly with things like accelerating product delivery, being able to successfully manage change with little disruption. These are all things that I think working in a more iterative way will provide. Do some research. I encourage you to have a look. There's plenty of case studies out there where it has worked. Remember, it isn't easy. Any change initiative has to be adopted by your own business in its own way. You've got to think of culturally how it will work for you with your people. So once you get past some of the jargon and the buzzwords around agile, and apologies, I'm sure I've used a couple myself, you kind of realize that the software communities where a lot of this thinking came from were simply using common sense. And that common sense actually existed in lean manufacturing methodologies way before then. Basically, you build products in small batches or iterations. You manage the risk in small batches and in iterations, effectively. And you can constantly inspect your outputs, gathering customer feedback in order to learn and adapt what you're building. I would argue that that's a much more realistic approach to change. In my experience, the only thing 6 months of planning upfront provides is a false sense of security and a lot of difficult conversations when you have to start changing your plan, or you're slipping on your plan before you've actually written any code. Always an interesting one for me. So at the heart of all this, and at the heart of agile and lean thinking, and all the frameworks that come with that, and obviously it's down to your business, what you choose to adopt, what bits you want to use, what bits work for you, whether you're talking about Scrum or Kanban or various methodologies or your own hybrid, it's still about building great teams. And again, that feels like management common sense to me. So it's essential to create proactive, collaborative, cross-functional teams that can self-manage and be trusted to solve your customer problems. Remove the silos and recognize that it takes a vast amount of shared knowledge and expertise to achieve great results. So moving on to product ownership, I think this visual illustrates nicely that shift that we're making from technology traditionally being seen as order takers to actually bringing us closer to customer and business needs. Being empowered to question and interrogate the value of a feature is key, and the importance of being able to say no, even to your most senior executives and your CEO, is also crucial. And that's how you maintain a successful product and a successful product management function. Now, remember, the other great point from this that I take away is that what you leave out of a product is just as important as what you put in. And that brings us nicely onto the roadmap. This isn't real, by the way. When I was first involved with Smart Shop, the roadmap looked a bit like this. So you've got a lot of date commitments on there, different work streams. A lot of this was untested ideas, people's opinions in the office, and no one had actually taken any of this stuff to an engineer or to any of the teams to estimate how long it would take. So what you're likely to get is a very disappointed group of stakeholders when you start slipping on all those deadlines. So some further context to bring this to life. At the time when I joined, the product was only live in 2 pilot stores. We were having a number of technical and operational issues, which was harming adoption by customers. And yet we kept going back to the business and promising them all these great things we were eventually going to do. I realized at that point that we had made a classic mistake of trying to cram too much into the product, losing its actual value. So at that stage, it's important to go back to the vision, as I mentioned, and really question what the aims were and why you're doing what you're doing. So I guess what I'm saying is I moved away from this type of a roadmap and this type of an approach to something much simpler, which is this now next approach. And the great thing about this is that it enabled us to have much better conversations with our wide group of stakeholders. So importantly, again, bringing it to life, if I think about that first phase around getting the basics right, with the example I've just given you, we had a product that wasn't fulfilling its promise to give customers a seamless end-to-end journey. So how could we possibly be thinking about iterating it to do all those other complicated things that customers couldn't even get to because we hadn't fulfilled the first part of that mission? So really it was around explaining to our executive team that we would go back to basics. We would mobilize an engineering team, figure out what was wrong throughout the stack, and really focus on fixing those basic issues before we could make promises to move on with the product. So in terms of doing that, we also mobilized a lot of our business readiness teams, because again, that was important as well, to make the business understand, and the wider business, that it was that combination of technology ironing out their bugs, but the business teams ironing out the operational issues and working hand in hand to create that seamless experience. Customer adoption and engagement depends very much on the stability of your digital experience. And it was key for us to earn the trust of our users before dazzling anyone with additional features and capabilities. Another great visual. I like simple things. So this, again, speaks to me about how it's so easy to overcomplicate our products, because we tend to work in committees, we take on everyone's opinion, and we don't really always question or bring it back to what the customer really wants. And unfortunately, what happens then is we have products that become unusable in our organizations. So you've got to remain selective. And like I said, don't be afraid to say no. So I've mentioned already a few times the importance of cross-functional collaboration, and I cannot stress this enough. A product management function, or a good product management function, should be bringing those multidisciplinary teams together. And really, that's about being concerned primarily with the customer experience and what the end user is going to be doing with your product and what are the important things to them. So really, what we started to do was to remove some of those handoffs that existed between all the teams that it takes at Sainsbury's to build and deliver a digital product to our customers in store. And there's a recognition here that no specialism can operate on its own. You need all of these parts to play together for it to make sense to our customers. So what we do now is we bring all the experts together. We try to get them dedicated around a goal as one team. And so we're ensuring that operational colleagues, technology colleagues, design colleagues are all working hand in hand to ensure that that digital experience is the best it can be. So again, if you put yourself in the shoes of your customers, and this will sound fairly obvious, I don't think anyone ever goes to a store and thinks, the IT was terrible, but the furniture was nice. I think actually what they're doing is that's just damaging your brand, because they're engaging with that. So in terms of what kind of results this is starting to yield for us, it is driving engagement. We're seeing early indications that it's positive, and we can see that we're starting to increase the adoption of some of our digital products with our users. It's driving operational efficiencies, and we're starting to see an impact on customer loyalty as well. So it's early days, but we feel we're on track. Now, early insight tells us that our digitally engaged customers do increase the amount of times they visit our stores. Therefore, they're increasing their weekly spend with us. And that's really, again, how having the metrics for us to measure allows us to bring this to life to the people who control the funds in our company. So for Smart Shop specifically, as we begin to approach rolling out to more stores, with a stable platform, we can now start to leverage and think about those cool, exciting, value-generating features that we were promising 12 months ago. And they will enhance the experience further, but what we're going to do is make sure that we're listening to our customers before we decide what to prioritize next, or listen to our business colleagues in terms of what will drive that value. So a final thought to leave you on, and apologies, I've run a little shorter than I thought I would. That's what happens when two of your colleagues let you down. I think I've made this point already, but I'll make it again. Transformation is much wider than just IT. And I've seen this in my last 12 months in retail at Sainsbury's. I noticed this when I was at Sky before this and in telecoms, that ultimately we have to start to think about reorganizing our businesses to be more collaborative. We have to break down the silos, we have to avoid them, and we have to think about serving our customers as a unit. And ultimately, it's only there that we will be able to serve our customers with a unified experience, however, wherever, and whenever they want. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Fabrice. I am a massive fan of agile in all its factors, so it's great to see such a large retailer going through the pain of implementing it. So who's got a question for Fabrice? If you put your hands up and we can get a mic to you. Oh, goody, I nearly got to ask a question. We've got a hand up down here, so if you just wait for the microphone. She's just coming to you now.
Hi. So when you were going through the process of adopting a lean and agile methodology within the business, how much resistance did you get, both from IT and guys at the top, to sort of implement that change?
Well, we're still in it, so I wouldn't say we've achieved that and we're fully agile by any means. I think quite a bit of resistance, but it's interesting because we started with IT, And I think even within IT, we experience quite a bit of resistance. But that doesn't necessarily help you influence the rest of the business. So what we're starting to see is that it's really the top-down approach that's helping. Having our most senior executives really embrace this way of working is actually what's starting to help us get it throughout the rest of the organization. So I think if I was going to take away kind of one thing from the experience so far at Sainsbury's is if you can get the people at the top and you can go for a top-down approach, it does help in a big corporate.
Okay, do we have another question? Okay, I have one of my own, so I'll ask, we've got time, I'll ask that one, which might be exactly the same answer you've just given, actually, but what have you found to be like the most surprising challenge in implementing Agile in such a large business?
There's been so many. I think what's really interesting is actually the behavior of people. So it's really interesting to see how traditionally, because we're organized mostly in silos, in those silos, we tend to confuse information with power. And that's what becomes difficult, is when you're in a more traditional waterfall project, you tend to deal with those handoffs because different teams will kind of hoard the information they've got. And it's always very difficult to get that information to help and benefit the wider project. So it's been really interesting to bring all those people together because all of a sudden you've kind of got nowhere to hide. And you've got to realize that it doesn't make you more important, it doesn't make that person more in charge, you're all driving to the same goal. So that's been a really interesting learning as well. And I've seen that elsewhere as well, outside of Sainsbury's.
So not the tech, but the people.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, do we have another question? We have time. Oh yes, down at the front there.
Hello. So Agile seems like a sensible thing to do, but in terms of you move from waterfall, I guess, approach to Agile approach, is there anything that's been negative that you've lost from moving from waterfall to Agile?
Great question. So there is. I think one of the things we've lost is, and I guess back to the initial question, by doing the transformation in a silo, which is how we started it, the thing you miss is that you don't get that overarching understanding from everyone from the start. So what you get is you get pockets that kind of have their own interpretation of what Agile means. So some people focused on the process. And then in some ways that becomes less Agile because they're not really thinking about it's a mindset, it's about being flexible. They're saying, well, no, we do Scrum, so you've got to follow these rules. And again, that's very easy to kind of miss when you're not speaking to an entire company, I think. And so the thing that I think's been lost through all this that was good in Waterfall is that concept that Agile is not about planning. I think that's completely untrue. You can still have a very high-level plan. You should have a goal, you should have a vision, you should know where you want to end up in 12 months, 5 years. It's just about breaking it down into stages to get there. I think that sometimes gets lost in Agile. People think, oh, it's Agile. These guys don't write anything down. They just show up and make it up on the spot. And I think that's, unfortunately, people do perpetuate that myth. So we've just got to get better at it.
Excellent question, excellent answer. Do we have another? Oh, we've got a lady just behind you there.
Hi.
Hello.
So in achieving kind of this agility, surely communication is incredibly important. So how are you encouraging communication throughout your teams and actually breaking down these silos to allow this to happen?
Communication is incredibly important. The other thing that I think is important is visual communication. So the other thing we did by starting to move Agile outside of just technology is move away from some of the Agile tools that a lot of technologists will use and actually go back to just using boards that people could see, that anyone around the business could come and see what teams are doing, what are the user stories they're working on, what are the goals they're trying to achieve, and encouraging teams to have cross-functional stand-ups. So every morning now, I know one of my teams actually has a stand-up which has got people from the property team, people from formats, people from operational teams, as well as the technology and product guys from my side of the fence. And they're all speaking together. They're all, meeting every day for 15 minutes just to talk through the problems they're having in each of their area and how they can help each other to solve them. So it's absolutely key, communication. And I think as much as possible, it's difficult sometimes with geography, but we would encourage co-location as well, so you can have those conversations face to face.
Okay, do we have possibly one or two final questions? put your hand up now, or? Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you, Fabrice. That was brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you very much.